Good morning, everybody, and thanks for joining us. My name's Chris Carter. I work for Wunderman here in Seattle. I'm a group strategy director there. Thanks for joining our panel, which we're calling Claiming the Future of Mobile Search. It's interesting, the other day I was sitting at home and I was watching TV, lounging around on the sofa as you do, using my phone. I was using search, as you do, and it came back to me and it kind of said, judging by the expression on your face and the noise coming from your stomach, it seems like that you're searching for pizza. And I kind of thought, well, actually, no, that's not the case. I'm searching for moderating forums for dummies. However, I was impressed that it had managed to come back with something that was so technologically advanced. Actually, none of that did happen. I made the whole thing up. But the point is that with search, that could happen fairly soon. And that's what we like to explore with this panel today. So what we're going to be looking at is how do advertisers and brands take the fullest advantage of the mobile search experience and seize the opportunities that that presents to them. And to help me with that, I have the panel here to my left. I have Gregg from Marin software. He's joining us. He is their Director of Research and Partnerships. Next to him, I have Sheryl Tullis from Iconmobile, as well as sporting many different hairstyles. Sheryl is the Director of Client Services with Iconmobile. Next to her, I have Gregg Hamilton, who's the VP of Research and Analytics with AdGooroo. And next to him, Stephen Hall from Catalyst Online, who leads their SEO team and has 10 years experience in search marketing. What we're going to do is we're going to spend about 5 minutes with each of our panelists, basically just kind of setting up what we're going to be covering today, and then we'll move into more of a discussion type format with an opportunity for Q&A towards the end. So what is going to happen, Gregg is going to help us set up the stage and talk about why this is important, why brands should care. And then Sheryl is going to lead a short presentation on how brands can actually participate. From there, Gregg's going to talk us about which types of brands should participate. And from there, Stephen is going to talk to us about what and how brands should actually measure. And from then on, we're going to move into the Q&A. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Gregg to take us through the short first section.
Thanks, Chris. Hi, everyone. This is Gregg. I'm with Marin Software. I head up research and partnerships. Let me give you a little bit of background about Marin, just so you have some context about how we have this data and why it's relevant for this presentation. So we're an online ad platform. We work across search, social, and display. We're probably one of the leading platforms. We manage about $4 billion in spend, so that's paid search spend, across about 1,800 customers around the world. So we have pretty good insight into the trends across devices, across geos, and that's sort of the basis for a lot of the data that we're sharing with you today, at least in the first part of the presentation. So I guess one question is, why is mobile paid search relevant, and sort of what is mobile paid search? So when you think about mobile, there's different types of ads you can see. There's display ads, there's ads inside apps, and then the last category is really search. And if you kind of think about how that pie looks, search in terms of actual volume of dollars is probably 70% or more of all the ad dollars that are spent on mobile devices today. So it's bigger than display, it's bigger than apps, it's by far the largest chunk of mobile ad spend. And it's also growing quite fast. So this chart here looks at sort of the mobile revenues for Google projected out over the next 5 years. So the top chart looks at how much revenue Google is forecasted to earn from mobile search, or mobile in general, and that's kind of growing from $5.8 billion in 2012 to a $20 billion business for Google by 2016. That's gigantic, and that's why, as you can imagine, there's a lot of people paying attention to to mobile paid search. And then the bottom chart sort of says, okay, what is that as a percentage of Google's overall revenue? And in 2012, we think it's about 13% of Google's total revenue. 2016, it's about 26% of Google's total revenue. So it's really staggering in terms of how big this business is, how fast it's growing, even at the size it's at. And that is going to drive a lot of innovation in this marketplace, right? Just the sheer size of that. And the reason we're talking about Google here is because when you think about mobile search, at this point, it's really, Google's really the main player in that, and they probably account for over 95% of mobile search today. We think Yahoo and Bing will catch up at some point, but they're not quite there yet. So how does this sort of manifest itself for advertisers? So if you're a brand or you're an advertiser, one of the things you're looking at is what percentage of clicks are coming from smart mobile devices. So when we talk about smart mobile devices, we mean smartphones and tablets, both of those devices. So it could be iOS, it could be Android, it could be a Galaxy phone, it could be an iPhone. So in October of last year, across all of our clients, across about $4 billion in spend, we saw that about 9.6% of the entire click volume was coming from smart mobile devices. Fast forward a year later, and now we're looking at almost 20%. So it's grown at over 100% in terms of the size of that marketplace. So it's growing very, very fast. And it's growing fast because consumers are responding quite well and using their mobile phones more to do search. And that's kind of one of the big driving factors behind it.
Do you have any insight as to whether it's incremental clicks or taking clicks away from the desktop?
That's a great question. So the question was, are these clicks incremental, or are they kind of cannibalizing the desktop, if you will? So that's a two-part answer to that, I think. So the first part is clicks on smartphones are typically incremental, because when you're using the smartphone, you might be commuting, you might be out and about somewhere. Typically, it's going to be used in a context when you don't have your desktop or your laptop with you. So in that sense, they're incremental. When you look at tablets, tablets are now starting to really be a part of the PC replacement cycle. So when people's PCs get older, they don't necessarily go out and buy a new PC, they might go out and buy a tablet. And so in that sense, about half of tablet clicks we think are replacing desktop clicks, and the other half are probably incremental. So share of ad budgets. So this is kind of where things really start getting interesting for advertisers, because the question here that you're really trying to answer is how much of your search budget should you be spending on mobile devices, should you be allocating towards mobile devices? And this is important because it's sort of the bigger percentage of budget you're allocating towards it, it really says something about your strategy, how big your team's going to be, what kind of resources they'll have. So it's really kind of an organizational issue here. And what we found, again, here is that in the last 12 months, the share of search budget to mobile went from 7% to about 15%. And we think that by March of next year, it'll be 20% or 1/5 of budgets for most advertisers. Now keep in mind, if you're retail, restaurant, it could actually be more than that today. But on average, we think it'll be 20% across all advertisers by March of next year. So it's click volumes there with consumers really kind of engaging with mobile phones on search, and advertisers are following by throwing more budget at these devices. And they're being rewarded for that budget. So what we find here is, this is looking at click-through rates across all of these clients. And what we found is that smartphones have more than twice the click-through rate of paid search ads than the desktop, and it's also significantly higher than what it is on tablets. And so again, what does this really say? So a couple things here that's interesting. So one reason for this is, if you think about the real estate on a smartphone and you think about what percentage of that real estate is captured by a paid search ad versus the same on a desktop, it's much higher on a smartphone. So when you're doing a search on a smartphone, the ads will take up a significant chunk of your real estate. And so that's one reason why consumers respond well to it. And then I think the other thing is consumers are typically searching for something with more urgency when they're on their mobile phone. So that's the other reason why they tend to click more. But regardless, we see that there's higher click-through rates, and that's another reason why advertisers are interested. And then last but not least, these clicks are cheaper than they would be on the desktop. So if you look at the average cost per click for an advertiser across smartphones, it's significantly less than what it is for computers and desktops, and also less than what it is for tablets. So over time, we're going to see these trends sort of normalizing as conversion rates catch up and reach sort of some kind of an equilibrium across these devices. At this point, there is an opportunity for advertisers, I think, to take advantage of low CPCs, high CTRs, to really kind of double down and invest strategically in mobile. So that's all I had. I'm going to pass it over to Sheryl, and she's going to talk to you guys about how brands can play on mobile. Thank you. Oh, sorry.
All right, thanks. So Gagan showed a real case for mobile and how it's growing. And the question is, how can brands take advantage of that? My perspective comes from years as a marketer, but also several years in the mobile business. The Iconmobile is a design, mobile marketing, and technology company for mobile. And we think of mobile in the largest context, which is anytime you're not sitting at your PC, you're mobile. Mobile is the context. It's not a device and it's not a technology. So that means it could be a retail point of sale, you could be in an automobile and you have a customized dash, or in your typical phones and tablet devices. And so thinking about that, when you're placing search, you have to think about what context that user is going to be in, what location they're in, what they're doing, and what they want to accomplish while they're doing that, what time of day it is, and then what is the device or the screen that you're going to display it on. So it's really important to think of all the use cases, experience your brand as a searcher, and figure out what they need to accomplish in each context, and then that'll help guide what you place. And then some companies are doing some interesting things with this. I'm showing them Google Now cards. Is anybody using Google Now on an Android device? So what this is Google abstracting a lot of the different information from different pieces. They know where you've been, where you work, and the route you usually take, so they can present to you how long you have to get to the next appointment or when you need to leave in order to get to work. It also recognizes where you are. Say you're close to a train station, it can give you the next trains that are going to come in because it knows the time of day and it knows what's happening at that particular location. So this is an example of some forward thinking. How do we start presenting information that the person might use, because we know when they're in that context, what kind of activities they're going to do based on their past behavior. And so the next tip is to think about the new user interfaces that are coming on when you're thinking about search. Natural user interfaces such as Connect are presenting whole new ways to search for entertainment media. So when you're thinking about how to get your brand out there, you have to think, are people going to be clicking? Are they going to be swiping and gesturing? Are they going to be doing hand waving? And how's that going to affect your search results? And then Siri, or the voice recognition, is coming. Most platforms have voice recognition now. And that changes how people search. It's not just search term anymore, but it's more natural language. And another huge change that this brings is the fact that Siri's algorithm is based on ratings and reviews in part. So if you don't have ratings and reviews about your brand, or you're not publishing those, Siri is going to not like your results, and they're going to present other results that have ratings and reviews. So make sure you're thinking about the kind of content that goes into searching. And then once you have them, make those mobile searches count. So we talked about how there's more real estate for a search ad or a search result on a phone, so you get more clicks. But you can also help guide that by having thumb-friendly calls to action. You can see this. This is a cleaning company on the right side here, and they've made it really easy for a click to call or location finder. And then they've also thought about what are the top things that people usually want to do once they get to my site. I'm just going to present those in easy-to-use buttons. You also have a chance to display local offers if there's a coupon or just even an advertisement, so that you can talk about the value of your business. You can present that in a search result. And then you have to think about what happens when they click through. Where are they going to go from there? And is there a mobile optimized landing page that somebody can actually use when they get to that destination? So think through that next logical place. And make sure, since so many people are searching on iOS devices, that if your page is flash heavy, that you might present them an alternate page. This is just another example of how search is changing. This is Bing, and they're bringing social search into the realm. So you see the right rail has people who have commented or liked or left tips about the brand that I'm searching for. This isn't the same experience on mobile yet. On mobile, you can just share your search results and you can ask for feedback from your friends, but it does post to your Facebook if you choose to do that. So you also have to think about the bigger social environment and whether they're going to enable your brand. The next is really think beyond the big search engines. People are looking for things in very specific places for certain categories. You might go to Yelp or OpenTable to find a restaurant reservation. You're looking for, the center thing there is Angie's List. So if you're looking for a contractor, you might go specifically to an app. And the same thing with visual display of information with Pinterest. People are searching for different sorts of information there. So don't miss out on your chance to have content in those channels, because that's just going to increase your results. And then finally, a lot's been said about showroomers, but the guidance here from the MMA and Vibes Media is to embrace them. You can see the data here that once people showroom and they walk out, 50% of them actually, well, 48%, they still buy on that brand's website. So they are really looking to reinforce their purchase decision. And if you can present information to them that helps reinforce that, whether it's competitive prices, your own value proposition, or ratings and reviews, likely you're going to still keep that sale even if they do walk out. And here's an example of somebody who did that well with Kodak. When you scan at the point of the retail shelf, you can get information to see the printer in action. You can get a total cost of ownership with what paper and ink are going to cost, and you can get a local offer there too. So there's a lot of engagement that they're doing just to keep that customer and help them. There's actually an indicator that helps them find the right printer for them. So they can get all that information at the shelf without ever having to leave. And then if they can't find the product, it helps them find another store that has it or to order online. So I think this is a really great example of how you embrace that showroom activity. We know that showroomers are much more likely to purchase via m-commerce, and they're more likely to check in places. So they're a more engaged user already, so take advantage of that. And so now Gregg's going to talk to you about which brand should play in which space.
Thank you, Sheryl. There we go, clicker. So I'm at AdGooroo. We compile data on paid search, also on organic and on display. 14 engines, 50 markets, so a whole lot of data. We have about 4,000 users that come in and subscribe to our services. And next year, let's turn off our cell phones, folks. Next, the wife's without power on the East Coast, so forgive her. So next year we hope to come with a mobile product and enable marketers to see how much searching is going on in mobile. Let me click, please. There we go. I'm going to contrast the experiences on smartphones and tablets, because we think that both the search sponsorship and the landing pages should be somewhat different. The experience is obviously different for a consumer. And I'm going to go through what types of brands we feel should be playing in the mobile search space. And clearly, brands that are selling to consumers should be there. The smartphone penetration in the U.S. is past 50% now, so many of those consumers, that smartphone is their internet access. They may have internet access at work, but then when they leave work, that smartphone is it. And so, clearly, if you want to reach those consumers that are searching for you, the smartphone is going to be the easiest way for them to find you. The tablet, different experience because there is more real estate there, and as Gagan mentioned, the tablets we're going through a replacement now of desktops and computers with tablets, and so we can see the trend there, and clearly you want to be enabling consumers that are now switching over to that device in their home. If you're in a retail or location-based business, mobile is local, and the consumer is foot traffic. And you want them to be able to find you. On the tablet side, these owners that are replacing their devices are what we in marketing classically call early adopters, so they tend to be more affluent, a more affluent segment. And so if you're appealing to more affluent consumers, you might want to be reaching them on their tablets. If your business operates after hours, We see that search traffic on desktops and laptops peaks in the morning, and on mobile devices, it peaks in the evening. Okay, so they really complement each other really well. And if your business then is doing business in the evening, you should be sponsoring search on smartphones for sure. And it's also true for tablets because, of course, many of those tablets are going into homes. So the consumers on their laptop or computer at the office, and then when they go home, it's their tablet that they're using to search. Content publishers, really important. Again, many of those consumers out there, that smartphone is their internet access. So this is how they're going to find you and subscribe to you, read your content. The tablet, of course, is clearly a media consumption. It's primarily a media consumption device, and a very powerful one at that. About 60% of them don't support Flash, so you should think about that in your landing page and in your mobile-enabled site. And we don't want to leave off businesses. There is like 100% penetration of smartphones among field staff, among IT folks, among business decision makers. And so if you want those kind of professionals to find you, you probably should be sponsoring search on smartphones. And just as in the homes, the tablets are replacing PCs. We see this happening in business as well. So, poise yourself. Be ready for that. I'm having trouble with the clicker. So now, why? Let's talk more about it and more about the types of products and services. For the consumers, of course, if you're selling product, if you're selling services, if consumers are going to want to find directions to you or know whether you're open or not, you clearly have to be enabling that in the smartphone space, and in tablets, information and reference, enabling comparison shopping. It's a really nice device with good replication of images, so it's a really nice device for comparison shopping. Foot traffic dependent businesses like the Cheesecake Factory, show and tell products and services, very powerful on the tablet. After hours, of course, we're talking clubs, bars, movie theaters, also transportation. And the content publishers for info on the go, Seattle Times, thinking locally. And for the businesses, we're talking about supply chain, again, transportation issues, services and support, Salesforce automation, and so on. And we can see the tablets paralleling everything that's going on the desktop. So, sooner or later, everyone is going to be there. It's not going to work for everybody, and certainly there are people that have retreated from mobile to this point, but we see a wave coming, and don't be late. Again, harking back to what Gagan pointed out, lower CPCs, higher CTRs. It's like, why aren't you there? You should be there testing because it's cheaper than your desktop search at the moment. Test now while it's cheaper and while there's still time to get in and optimize. Of course, your presentation should be a little different. You have the fat finger issue with thumb typing. The keywords are going to be shorter, more head terms, and you probably should in your landing page opt out of a form fill because it's so much clumsier to type on a mobile device. Perhaps click to call is a better option for many businesses here. A couple of concerns, as we said, less SERP real estate on the phone, so there's going to be fewer winners. It's going to be more competitive out there on the smartphone search. So compete, get in there and figure it out or get shut out. Your competitor is out there optimizing and learning what it's going to cost them. Finally, there are more devices. There's more fragmentation across the devices and the engines. This means more versioning. Yes, it's true. You're going to have to set up multiple landing pages, conceivably run multiple search campaigns. I know you don't want to hear that, but it's get in or get beat. The lower amounts of traffic in these various devices and engines means you have to take more time to test, and that raises the whole issue of measurement, and so let me turn it over to Stephen to explore that.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay, so there's another slide from Gagan's work with Marin that looks at the conversion rates, and so I looked through the whole deck previously, and it came up with a statistic that I can't see because of Chris's head, are likely undercounted, which was, I think we all inherently know that less people are going to be converting on the mobile handset, and likely undercounted just struck me as funny language. So naturally what we're trying to do is work out exactly what we're getting from mobile and when. So cross-stream attribution is the big holy grail. It's not possible right now. I mean, Google, Apple, Microsoft probably have the capability. They're probably not allowed to do it across devices. Currently, you can identify someone from a phone if they then jump to a tablet and then jump to their desktop for the actual purchase. You can't do that. The reason that Google, Apple, and Microsoft can do it is because users are logged in. And similarly with apps. And again, you'd need to have a fairly significant app ecosystem, like Amazon does, obviously, to be able to measure it through the entire process across devices. So it's a really tough one for most businesses because they don't have the size or scale or don't have their own handsets, devices, tablets, and PCs. So when trying to define success for mobile, I mean, obviously it's going to vary by every business. So success for you might be in this case, I'm showing a purchase funnel, and it may be an actual purchase that you're driving to, but in a lot of cases, it's a local business. Maybe a success is a visit to the store. So you need to think carefully about what it is you're trying to measure. When you're thinking about a search campaign, again, I don't know the experience of the room, but you generally want to be trying to drive people through the purchase funnel. So start with awareness, broader terms. Now, a lot of the time, there's probably going to be a lot more broad searches on mobile handsets because they're smaller and a little bit less naturally easy to type on. So you might have a bigger awareness group. Actually, the terms that are normally in awareness that are broader might actually be much closer to the purchase within the mobile space. Anyway, the point of the funnel is to show that you're driving people down through. So once they're aware, they do a broad search, they become aware of brands or aware that they're going to try and buy something, then they come down through. Then they come to preference. So, have they decided that they like your specific brand, and then from there they go on to basically try and find the best deal. So a few things that you should be doing to test conversion comparison. It's likely that desktop converts higher if you're a traditional any sort of online or e-commerce business, but there's got to be a lot of businesses where mobile might work actually more effectively. So you should look at the conversion rates. If you're running a paid search campaign on desktop and a paid search campaign on the mobile, you should be trying to compare the two and look at which one's converting better for you. Obviously, there's lower CPCs, as I think everyone's spoken about before, so there might be a real advantage to looking at that. Interesting one to do is to think about the top funnel clicks. So if you have more top funnel clicks on your mobile handset, so awareness terms, does that then drive to more purchase on the desktop? So if you have, I think a big part of the reason that mobile conversions are lower, particularly if it's a purchase, is because you're not going to sit there and fill out your credit card details into your little handset. Whereas if you're doing it on the desktop, or if someone has the ecosystem in place, like Google Wallet is, Amazon as well, they've already got your details. So it makes it a really easy, almost one-click process whereby you will actually buy from a mobile device. So it's how easy can you make that process for them? But yeah, the point of this test is just to see, obviously you need to be running paid search to be able to see if this is going to happen. But if you ran concurrently a mobile campaign and just the top funnel of a mobile campaign, or you could do the whole funnel and see if it actually drives more purchase on the desktop. Because the hard thing with this, it's been the same in media agencies for a long time. You're trying to get attribution for all the dollars that you're spending. So, when you're running TV, search volume for your brand should go up, or for things relating to your brand, assuming that you've got a commercial that people are interested in. So it's trying to look at when you've actually been doing these campaign flightings and what effect they've been having on your actual conversion rates. Do more bottom funnel clicks actually equal more mobile purchases? Again, depending on your business, if people aren't buying online then, or on the mobile device, then it's a slightly different process, but you could be doing it in a different way with driving people to store, for example. So yeah, do the bottom funnel clicks actually convert for you? Is it something that's worth investing your money in, or is it somewhere that you just have to be there? I talked about in-store visits. Obviously, this is Nordstrom in Seattle today, looking with sunshine. How do you drive in-store visits, and then importantly, how do you measure it? Okay, so if can you, from your mobile experience, that your landing page that you're sending people to, deliver some form of coupon or some way of identifying that a user has actually made a search using a mobile device and then come into your store? And how do you continue that relationship with them and make them feel good? Sheryl talked about the showroomers, people who come in to go and check out products physically before they go and, they probably plan to go and buy them for the cheapest price. And that's, they think, usually online. So how do you change the value proposition so that they feel like they get more or a more personalized service? So quick takeaways from this. Yeah, you can't really track across screens right now, but you can understand those big trends. As I say, campaign flighting is really important. It's definitely worth doing the testing. Or if you have an app or a series of apps and a big enough ecosystem, you could potentially do it that way. Test mobile search strategically. And then understand how your audience use mobile search, because it varies for every different business. So it may be that you're a very high-tech product. It may be that you're a product you can purchase online. It may not be a product you can purchase online. So make sure you're setting up the right goals. It's pretty easy to sit there and say, no one bought anything. It's like, well, that's hardly surprising that no one bought, but did you drive intent? Did you change the way that people were thinking about your brand? I think that's it. Looking ahead.
Thanks, Stephen. Okay, so I'm just going to ask a couple of questions to the panel, basically on looking ahead and where we see things going. The first question is, what's the single biggest opportunity or challenge for brands that we see at the moment? And Gregg, would you mind starting us off on that one, please?
Sure. In my mind, it's justifying the investment in setting up mobile search campaigns. It's obviously very hard to justify something before you've done it. And in this instance, we're preaching that you need to set up multiple campaigns, smartphone and tablet, and maybe in multiple devices. So that's a real hurdle, a real hill to climb.
It's also really tricky. Like if it's a small business, for example, they might stand some of the most to gain from mobile. If you're trying to actually drive footfall into your restaurant, for example, and then going and saying, you've got to set up two campaigns, one for your desktop and one for your mobile, and it starts to get, even if it's not that complicated, it gets daunting for, like I say, a small business owner.
And I think Sheryl had to come back to me.
Well, to the daunting point, it is, I think there are so many different things to consider with fragmentation and all the different UIs that are out there. But the key thing I see is people just being hesitant to even get started, to dip their toe in the water, because they kind of have this analysis paralysis about it. So my advice is just to start small and, test and learn, just do some A/B testing and, start in one area, one product, one geo, whatever it is, but just get out there and start testing, because it is cheap to do right now, so it's the best time.
And the classic, obviously, is to start at the bottom of the funnel, so you gradually get probably less efficient, but more leads as you go higher up the funnel.
Great, thanks, guys. Okay, so the second question I wanted to put was, I'm sure everybody knows that Google's stock prices have kind of taken a bit of a hit recently, and the pay-per-click prices have also fell by about 15% over the past year. So if you're an advertiser, you might be asking yourself, well, how come I'm not kind of experiencing any discounts as a result of that? Would you mind starting us off on that one, Gagan?
Sure. So Google's earnings came out a few weeks ago, and they had like a 15% decline in cost per click, the average cost per click on a year-over-year basis, so like in the last 12 months. And so the Wall Street had like a minor conniption. Google lost a significant chunk of their market cap. But really, at the end of the day, it's not a huge deal. And here's why. Because, there's more searches happening with mobile phones. And so there's more people doing more searches. And granted, some of these searches are cheaper on mobile devices because conversion rates still haven't caught up on mobile phones yet. But the good news is that the cost of a search for Google is really zero, right? So if there's more searches happening, even if they're at a lower cost per click, they still make more money. Now, from the point of view of the advertiser, I think it's important to keep in mind that it depends on the mix that you're going to see across mobile, desktop, and tablet. So if you're going to find more of your searches coming in on mobile and tablet, then you might experience some of this discount. Also, if you're doing retail and a lot of your spend is going towards product listing ads, for example, those also have lower cost per click associated with them. So that could also result in a lower cost per click for you on average. So it's kind of a devil's in the details kind of a thing, but I think overall, if I'm a retailer or a brand, and for me, I'm getting more click volume at a lower cost per click with the same or better conversion rate, I'm going to actually invest more in that program and not less.
Right. And the 15% isn't like a straight drop. Like, it's not like you're about to save 15% on your desktop campaign. The whole point is that 15% is aggregate across all markets and all types of devices. So an increase in mobile search, which we already said, lower cost per click, so that's going to bring their number down slightly. Then across different markets, India, very heavily mobile dependent, also I'm sure a much lower cost per click. So ultimately, as the searches increase globally across all the different developing markets, you're going to see a much lower overall cost per click. Doesn't quite mean Google have stopped making money.
Okay, I'd like to, open up the floor to questions from the audience. So if anybody has a question, please can you come up to the microphones and pose the question to the panel? It's a little difficult to see if anybody's actually standing there, so just come up and start speaking.
Anyone?
Research, come on.
Anyone? Okay.
Comprehensive.
I anticipated a quiet set of questions, so I've prepared some other questions, but if anybody does want to, please just feel free to come up and approach the mic. So we also thought that it would be interesting to consider, with Siri and other kind of personal assistants, how are those going to impact search, and what impact is that going to have kind of on the search marketplace? And I'm going to open it up to Sheryl first to sort of talk about that one.
Well, I think I already mentioned that ratings and reviews become really important, but also just the data that's available within, on your phone or in apps that the personal assistants can draw from is equally important to them figuring out how they can help you, what your past history was. So I think it, again, just goes back to figuring out what the key use cases are and how will people be searching in those use cases, and that will help those personal assistants find the relevant information. With the Google Now, it's real-time relevant information, so you always have to think about what can I give them that's going to be the most useful at that moment.
Yeah, I think also, to further on that, the whole ratings and reviews is about structured data. So really it's less about paid search, more about SEO, about trying to make sure that you're employing structured data so that things like microperformance, like schema, so that the crawlers have a better understanding of exactly what it is that is on your site. So like all the ratings and reviews, you see them as you see them, but there are little bits of code in there that are going to help the crawlers understand exactly what that data is and what it stands for, what sort of subset of data it lives in. And it helps them categorize it more easily and then surface it within the Siri results. I think the most interesting thing about Siri is the idea that it changes that sort of search paradigm. It's the similar, like Apple had a couple of strokes of genius, right? One was call it search, and it put a search bar in their browsers on their desktop as well. Same as they did with Maps. They didn't call it Google Maps, they called it Maps, so that they could change it later. Now, they didn't have great success with the changeover, and that's the biggest challenge. But the fact is that they got people used to just hitting a specific button rather than going off to Google. So the same thing with search. It's called search. When you've got an interface that's voice activated, people are asking questions. Some of it is within Siri's own natural processing, but an algorithm, but some of it is like if they don't have an answer to what you're asking, they're going to ask the question to a search engine and serve up whatever result is best. So they could change that search engine at any time. It doesn't have to be Google. And so that's a really big difference, because for the longest time, people are like, well, Google's it. Google's where I'm going to go and search, except for, sometimes you might wonder about market share, like how did MSN or now Bing keep that market share? And a lot of it was people that were perfectly satisfied with the answers, and it happened to be the default on their desktop, so they never thought to change it, right? And so in a similar way, I think Siri does some of that. I think really sort of drives a different interface. And I don't know how much people are actually using Siri. I don't think the percentages are really, really high. I think it's
11. 11%.
This one goes up to 11. But you also would have thought that more people are going to be using Siri while they're driving, because it makes sense, it's safer, right? So if you're going to start using that while you're driving, and then you've got a mobile, then you're a business that you want footfall in your stores, then really interesting that the mobile search is happening verbally. So what is the result that comes back from Siri that makes them think that yours is the right business if they're searching for, I don't know, pizza shop, and it's location aware because of the device and the GPS?
One quick thing to add on that, I think Siri is really fantastic. I think it sort of opens the door to a lot of people with sort of disabilities to be able to access search. And so in that respect, I think it's sort of a game-changing innovation for society. I think it's fantastic. I do think there's a downside to it, because imagine if Harold and Kumar had Siri in that movie, getting to White Castle wouldn't have been just as much fun as it turned out to be.
Gregg, anything you'd like to add on to that?
I'm curious how many people in the room use Siri.
Or any voice recognition, like
Show of
tell
hands.
me and.
Very good, thank you.
About 11%.
In case you weren't counting yourself.
Okay, let's take a look at another question. How can advertisers make better use of context? Sheryl's our context expert in that she develops apps and helps to deliver context for clients. But clearly, with mobile, there are a lot more contexts that are possible. Like I was talking about in the beginning, there's so many different kind of senses and things that we can take into account. So how can advertisers make better use of that? Does it make things more complex for them? And if so, how do they navigate that? Sheryl.
Yeah, you're up.
I think it does make things more complicated, but just like any brand marketing, the more relevant you are, the better results you're going to get, and so the better conversion you're going to get. And so the major search providers are able to, and with the technology that's out there, we're able to target based on location, based on the exact operating system and the model, the sort of phone you're on. And so all that gives us so much more ability to realize the context we're in and speak specifically to a person, with what they're doing at the time. And then we also have history. Like we know from a specific location, let's say it's the field formerly known as Quest Field. Let's say you're in the football stadium. People are going to be searching for a specific sort of information from the stadium. And when we know that, we can start serving up better results to those folks.
Yeah, just to kind of add on to that a little bit, I think context in mobile is primarily about location, right? So if you think about people that are doing mobile searches, a third of mobile searches, according to Google, have local context or local intention. So they're looking for something that's local. So you could show them a way, you could show them a link to a map that shows them how to walk or drive to that store. That's one use of context. You could have an ad that has a click-to-call link in it, so they can click and they can call and they can make an appointment, or they can call that business. That's a great use of context.
And then, very trackable.
Yeah, and then the last thing would be, I think it opens the door for a lot of innovation from publishers. So if you look at what's happening with Google Wallet and Google Offers, and you sort of imagine a not-too-distant future where people walking around that are signed in with their mobile phones could get context-aware coupons or offers and then redeem them using Google Wallet. That does two things. One, it takes advantage of context, and two, it closes the loop between an online marketing advert and an offline transaction or an offline redemption event. So I think context is crucial to mobile, and really it comes down to location.
Yeah, and also, and you talked about time of day, and I think also what's going on with the weather. When people are searching for weather, which is one of the top searches, you can actually send them something that's going to be either an advertisement for umbrellas or for sunglasses or for, like North Face actually sponsors in-app weather search, and they will show the right gear for the occasion. It might be Gore-Tex, or it might be a fleece, or it might be a down parka. So you can get really relevant on what's going on right there.
So, Gregg, do you think, I mean, how can we help kind of the advertisers navigate this as it gets more and more complex? Or when I say advertisers, I mean the brands themselves. How can they sort of learn about those different types of ways in which they can approach it and navigate that?
I think it goes back to testing. You got to try it. You got to see if it's going to work. And indeed, if you A/B test, or if you pulse, that is, run a campaign and then turn it off, that's going to enable you to estimate what the net impact is of that. But I think it's, got to stick your toe in. You got to try it, and if you don't, the chances are good you'll get shut out, because there's going to be few winners on any given search, and if you want that traffic, if you really want that traffic, you got to be there. So that would be my response there.
Another thing that I was thinking about when Gagan was speaking earlier about the click-to-call thing, I'm wondering if it's going to become, I mean, obviously the product itself has been around for years and years and years, but not seen great, not massive take-up. I'm wondering if, as the tablets as well all start to have Skype or FaceTime completely integrated, if there will be a much more natural, like, click-to-call where people feel more comfortable doing it with, I mean, computer, this tablet, rather than click-to-call previously, which felt a little bit clunky. I wonder if that will see an uptick in the way that people are using click-to-call.
Great, thanks. Okay, final question, unless anyone from the audience would like to pose one to the panel.
We have one.
Thank you.
Some audience participation. So I guess as we create these kind of tailored experiences, especially for mobile, where it's so critical to create a simple, kind of elegant path for people and make sure that it's relevant, and we have things like Siri that are interpreting what we want and then passing that information on to other relevance algorithms, what role does kind of offering up some conflicting information occasionally, and not always just feeding people the things that we assume that they want to know, what does that play kind of in the future of search, and kind of, I guess, kind of a social contract with Google, or something to that effect?
It's a really interesting question, and I relate it to my Facebook experience, where it seems like it keeps limiting me to the people I interact with most, and that's not what I want. I actually want the long tail of all of my contacts, and so it's a really interesting question about how do you enable people to discover that information too. I don't think I have an answer, but I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, and like from a search perspective, we're always thinking about relevancy, right? So naturally, the question, it sounded like that struck a chord, was that you'd be delivering people for a specific search, similar to, I guess, to the clothing suggestions, but it's still going to be a related item that you're going to get shown. Otherwise, you're going to be left with an experience. Someone searches for North Face and you send them to the Prada experience, it's not great for them. So, I mean, generally, like, search is all focused on relevancy, so that doesn't mean that a mobile experience shouldn't have a broader range of experiences, but from a search perspective, we're really always looking at relevancy.
It's an interesting question. So I think a couple things on that. One, Google uses backlinks as a signal to determine relevance for the search query. And so to the extent that there's all these backlinks that are pointing to certain web pages, they'll take you to that web page, regardless of if you wanted nuance in your answer or if you just wanted a straight answer. But I think if you look at, going back to Siri for a second, one thing that Siri does well is it aggregates data from specialized vertical search engines. So for example, if you want to know what's the distance between the Earth and the Moon, it'll go to a different search engine. And if you want to know what's the best Thai restaurant in the Embarcadero, it'll go to a second search engine. And so I think it comes down to having specialized search interfaces, and that's kind of the direction we're going down, both within apps. So people going to Yelp instead of going to Google on their phone, as well as using things like Siri, which sort of aggregates search to a higher level.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, well, thank you very much, everybody, for your time. I'm afraid that's all we've got time for today. But thank you very much for giving us your time and coming to participate.